I was hired to evaluate an abandoned hospital wing. I found out why they sealed it off 40 years ago. The smell hit me first. That distinct mixture of stale air and chemical disinfectant that seems to linger in every abandoned hospital. But there was something else too, something I couldn't quite place. As I stood at the entrance of St. Michael's Hospital's East Wing, my flashlight beam cut through decades of darkness, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I'm Dr. James Ryan, and after 15 years of evaluating defunct medical facilities, I thought I'd seen it all. I was wrong. The hospital administration had been oddly specific about conducting this evaluation at night. Fewer disruptions, they said. Easier to assess the structural integrity without the day-to-day chaos. But as I reviewed the maintenance logs from 1987, the year they mysteriously shut down this wing, I knew there was more to the story than they were telling me. I've always prided myself on being rational, methodical, the kind of person who believes in spreadsheets and structural surveys, not ghost stories and urban legends. But what happened in that wing over the course of 1 week changed everything I thought I knew about reality. The first red flag should have been Nurse Martinez. I met her in the cafeteria during my preliminary visit, her hands shaking as she stirred her coffee. "Dr. Ryan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I worked in that wing back in '87. Whatever they told you about why it closed, it's not the whole truth. The patients—" She stopped then, her eyes darting around the room. "Just be careful what doors you open. Some things should stay locked away." I dismissed her warning as the ramblings of someone who'd spent too many night shifts alone. Now, as I walked down the dimly lit corridor of the third floor, her words kept echoing in my mind. My footsteps echoed off the peeling walls, each sound seeming to bounce back slightly delayed, as if the space itself was playing tricks with time. The patient records room was my first stop. Standard procedure. Assess the documentation before examining the facilities. The door creaked open with surprising ease, considering its age. Inside, metal filing cabinets lined the walls, their surfaces dulled by years of dust. As I pulled open the first drawer, a photo slipped out, a group shot of the wing staff from 1987. Their smiles seemed forced, strained, all except one, a tall, gaunt doctor standing at the back, his expression unsettlingly vacant. The name on the back read, Dr. Sebastian Kane, head of psychiatric services. I'd read about Kane in the preliminary reports. Brilliant, but controversial, known for his experimental treatments. He disappeared the same week the wing closed, leaving behind a trail of questions and a handful of dead patients. Official cause? Heart failure? All of them. The odds of that happening naturally were astronomical. The sound of footsteps overhead made me freeze. I was supposed to be alone up here. The entire wing was sealed off. I killed my flashlight, listening. The footsteps continued, moving in a distinct pattern. 3 steps, pause. 3 steps, pause, like someone pacing. "Hello?" I called out, immediately regretting it. The footsteps stopped. Then came the humming, a low, monotonous tune that seeped through the ceiling. I recognized it, an old lullaby, the kind mothers sing to their children. But there was something wrong about it, something off-key and distorted. My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text from Liv, my research assistant. Found something in the archives. Dr. K had a theory about collective patient consciousness. Started experiments in '86. Need to talk ASAP. I started typing a response when the temperature plummeted. My breath came out in visible puffs, and the screen of my phone flickered. That's when I saw it, in the reflection. A figure stood behind me wearing a white doctor's coat, its face a blur of features that seemed to shift and change. I spun around, but the room was empty. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Or was that something else? A rhythmic beeping, like a heart monitor, seemed to be coming from somewhere down the hall. Against every instinct screaming at me to leave, I followed the sound. It led me to room 337, Kane's old office, according to the floor plan. The door was ajar, swaying slightly as if someone had just walked through it. Inside, the room was exactly as it had been left in 1987. Papers scattered across the desk. A half-empty coffee cup, now crusted with decades-old residue. But what caught my eye was the journal lying open on the desk, as if waiting for me. The pages were filled with Kane's handwriting, growing increasingly erratic as I flipped through them. His last entry made my blood run cold. The experiment works. The collective consciousness is real, but it's not what we thought. We didn't create a connection between patients. We created a door. And now something's coming through. They're in the walls, in the air. They whisper such terrible things. I have to end this, have to seal the ward. But it's too late for me. If you're reading this, run. They know you're here. They always know. A crash behind me made me drop the journal. When I turned, the coffee cup lay shattered on the floor. But it hadn't fallen. It had been thrown against the wall. Shadows were moving, coalescing into shapes that shouldn't exist. The humming started again, louder now, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Under it, I could hear voices, dozens of them overlapping, whispering words I couldn't quite make out. But one voice cut through clearly, speaking right next to my ear. "Welcome to my ward, doctor." Ryan. I ran, sprinting through the corridors as the lights flickered to life behind me, casting strange, shifting shadows on the walls. The exit door seemed to get further away with each step, the hallway stretching impossibly long. Behind me, the voices grew louder, and footsteps, so many footsteps, followed. Just before I reached the exit, I glanced back. What I saw in that moment will haunt me until the day I die. A crowd of figures in hospital gowns, their faces twisted in agony, led by a tall doctor with empty eyes and a smile that split his face too wide. I made it out, but only barely. The door slammed behind me with such force it cracked the frame. My phone had dozens of missed calls from Liv. When I finally called her back, her voice was trembling. "Doctor." "Ryan, I found death certificates," she said. "Not just from 87. There were others going back decades, all with Kane's signature. But here's the thing, the dates on some of them. They're from after the wing closed. The last one was filed yesterday." I'm writing this now from my hotel room, my hands still shaking. Tomorrow, I have to submit my evaluation of the wing to the hospital board. They're eager to reopen it, to expand their capacity. But I know now what Nurse Martinez was trying to tell me. Some doors should stay closed, some wounds shouldn't be reopened. I'm an urban explorer who found something in Old Town's tunnels. The walls are trying to make me. I never should have gone down there alone. That's what everyone keeps telling me now, as if I don't replay that decision in my head every single night. But they don't understand. None of them do. What I discovered beneath the streets of Old Town wasn't just some forgotten piece of history. It was alive. And now, a month after my escape, I feel compelled to share my story, if only to warn others who might be tempted by the same curiosity that almost cost me everything. My name is Sasha Lauren, and I run a somewhat successful urban exploration YouTube channel. Nothing huge. About 50,000 subscribers who enjoy watching me poke around in abandoned buildings and forgotten places. I've always been drawn to spaces with history, places where you can feel the weight of past lives pressing in around you. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found in those tunnels. I'd heard rumors about Old Town's underground network for years. Local history buffs claimed the tunnels dated back to the 1800s when the original town was built. Some said they were used for smuggling during Prohibition. Others swore they housed a secret society. The truth, as I would discover, was far worse. Getting access wasn't easy. I spent weeks building connections with the Historical Society, convincing them I was a serious documentarian interested in preserving local history. Clara, an elderly archivist with kind eyes and silver hair, finally took pity on me. "Just be careful down there, dear," she'd said, pressing the ancient brass key into my palm. "Some parts of history prefer to stay buried." I should have listened to the tremor in her voice. The entrance was hidden behind a rusted door in the basement of the old courthouse. The key struggled in the lock, but finally turned with a grinding sound that echoed through the empty building. Armed with my camera, LED lights, and what I thought was adequate preparation, I descended the narrow stone stairs into darkness. The first hour was exactly what I'd hoped for. The tunnels were a documentarian's dream. Old brickwork, mysterious doorways, and artifacts scattered about like breadcrumbs from the past. I filmed everything, providing commentary for my future video. "Check out these marks on the wall," I remember saying, running my fingers along deep grooves in the ancient brick. "Almost looks like someone was counting days or trying to leave a message." But then something changed. I'd marked my path with chalk arrows, a habit from previous explorations. Except when I turned around to head back, the arrows weren't pointing the way I remembered. At first I told myself it was just disorientation. Caves and tunnels can play tricks on your sense of direction. But then I saw one of my arrows change. I'm not speaking metaphorically. I watched through my camera's LCD screen as the chalk marking shifted like wet paint running uphill. The arrow that had pointed left now pointed right. I replayed the footage immediately, hands shaking. The video showed nothing but static during those crucial seconds. That's when I heard the humming. It was faint at first, easily dismissed as the buzz of distant pipes or electrical systems, but it had a melody, something almost familiar, a lullaby maybe, but slowed down and distorted, and it was getting closer. I switched my camera to night vision mode, hoping to conserve battery life. That's when I saw her, a woman in what looked like early 1900s dress standing at the end of the tunnel. She was turned away from me, one hand trailing along the wall, making those same grooves I'd noticed earlier. "Hello?" I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm a documentarian. I'm not here to disturb anything." She turned, and I dropped my camera. Where her face should have been, there was only brick, the same ancient brick as the tunnel walls. But somehow, impossibly, she spoke. "You already have." Hearing my name in her voice sounded wrong, like stones grinding together. We all wanted to be remembered, to be documented, to be found. Other figures emerged from the walls, each one a horrifying fusion of human form and architecture. And now you're here to tell our story. I ran, the tunnels twisted in impossible ways, defying the mental map I'd made. Each turn brought me face to face with more of them, men, women, children, all partially consumed by the very tunnels they haunted. Their voices merged into a chorus of that terrible lullaby. What happened next exists in my memory as fragments. The feel of brick dust in my lungs, the sound of my own screams echoing back at me in voices that weren't mine, the sensation of walls trying to pull me in to make me part of their eternal documentation of Old Town's forgotten souls. I survived because of Clara. She'd followed me down, suspicious of my real intentions. She found me just as the walls began to claim me, my left arm already numb and taking on the texture of brick. The last thing I remember is her voice, strong and commanding. She's not for you. She's already telling your story just as I have. When I woke up in the hospital, Clara was there. The doctors diagnosed exhaustion and hallucinations from possible gas leaks in the tunnels. My arm had severe abrasions and mysterious mineral deposits that took weeks to fade. The footage from my camera was completely corrupted, except for one frame. A clear image of Clara, looking about 60 years younger, standing among a group of people in early 1900s clothing, all of them smiling, all of them whole. Clara never visited again. When I asked the Historical Society about her, they claimed no one by that name had ever worked there. But they did show me a photograph from 1922, showing the original town council. And there she was, the same kind eyes, the same knowing smile. My new high school was closed for 15 years because of structural issues. That's not why they shut it down. I should have known something was wrong when I saw those scratch marks on my locker. Not the typical teenage vandalism kind. These were deep gouges in the metal, like something was trying to claw its way out. But hey, it was my first day at Blackwood High, and I wasn't about to let some damaged school property freak me out. Looking back now, I wish I'd trusted my gut and run while I still could. My name is Sophia Vera, and I'm writing this because someone needs to know what's happening at Blackwood High. The school reopened this fall after being shut down for 15 years, and the official story about the previous closures is such obvious nonsense. They claim it was structural issues, but my research tells a different story. Between 1995 and 2008, 17 students vanished without a trace. The police never found bodies, never made arrests, and the cases just went cold one by one until the school finally shut down. My first week started normally enough. I made exactly one friend, Jamie Shin, a quiet guy from my AP history class who prefers sketching in his notebook to actual socializing. We bonded over being the only freshman in that class and our mutual hatred of the school's queen bee, Madison Walsh, who took an instant dislike to me. Classic high school stuff, right? But then the whispers started. At first, I thought I was hearing other students talking in the halls between classes, except when I turned to look, no one was there. The whispers always seemed to be just on the edge of comprehension, like if I concentrated hard enough, I could understand what they were saying. Jamie noticed them too, which was both relieving and terrifying. At least I wasn't going crazy alone. Things escalated when Madison and her crew decided to pull their first prank. They locked me in the second-floor bathroom after last period. I wasn't too worried at first. This kind of stuff happened at my old school all the time. But as the minutes ticked by and the building grew quiet, the temperature dropped dramatically. The fluorescent light started flickering, and in the mirrors, I swear I saw something move behind me. Not a person, but a shadow that shouldn't have been there. That's when I heard it clearly for the first time. "Help us, Sophia." The voice sounded young, maybe my age, but wrong somehow, like it was coming from underwater or very far away. The shadows in the mirror started moving more deliberately, taking shape. I saw faces forming in the darkness, teenage faces, twisted in expressions of terror. I screamed and pounded on the door until the janitor found me. I tried telling him what happened, but he just gave me this look. Not like he thought I was crazy, but like he knew exactly what I was talking about and was terrified to admit it. The next day, Jamie showed me his sketchbook. He'd been drawing the same faces I saw in a mirror over and over in obsessive detail. "I see them in my dreams," he told me. "They want us to find them." We started digging deeper into the old disappearances. The victims didn't seem to have anything in common, except that they were all students here. But when we laid out the dates, a pattern emerged. Every disappearance happened exactly 28 days after the previous one. And if we're right about the pattern, someone else is going to vanish next week. Madison's bullying has gotten worse, but now it feels different. Yesterday, I caught her staring at me in class, but her eyes were wrong. Completely black, like empty sockets. When she blinked, they went back to normal, and she acted like nothing happened. I don't think she's behind the haunting anymore. I think something is using her the same way it probably used others to lure away those 17 students. Jamie and I found an old yearbook in the library from 2008. The missing students' photos are all marked with the same symbol, a spiral with what looks like teeth around the edges. The same symbol is scratched into the basement door, which is always locked. We've seen lights down there at night, even though the administration swears nobody has access to that level. The whispers are getting louder now, more urgent. They're trying to tell us something about the basement, about what's really under this school. Jamie thinks he's figured out why we can hear them. We're both exactly the same age as the last victims were when they disappeared. I know how this sounds, but I swear every word is true. If anything happens to me, look in the basement. And whatever you do, don't trust the shadows. They wear familiar faces, but they're not who they pretend to be. The scratches on my locker are spreading. Every morning, there are more of them forming that same spiral pattern. Madison's eyes aren't the only ones turning black now, and yesterday, Jamie didn't show up for class. I think I'm next, but I'm not going to disappear quietly like the others. I've got my phone set to upload this automatically if I don't check in every 12 hours. I'm going to find out what's in that basement, what really happened to those 17 kids, and why this school was allowed to reopen despite its horrific history. If you're reading this, it means I failed. Or maybe I found something I wasn't supposed to. Either way, remember these numbers. 28 days. Keep count, and whatever you do, stay away from Blackwood High after dark. The shadows here, they're hungry. The carousel horses cried real tears, not the rusted streaks you might see on an old carnival ride, but actual droplets that rolled down their painted cheeks and splashed onto their poles. I watched one fall, caught it on my finger, and tasted salt. That's when I knew I'd made a terrible mistake signing the contract with Mr. Grimshaw in my own blood. Not that he'd forced me to. I'd offered. God, I was so desperate to escape my old life that I practically begged him to let me join Grimshaw's midnight carnival. Now, I understand why he smiled that way when I did. It's been 3 months since I started working here, and I need to get this story out before I can't anymore. My name is Jesse Davenport, J.D. to everyone here, and I'm writing this from the back of my trailer, listening to the copy music that never quite stops, even when the power's off. If you're reading this, stay away from any carnival that appears in your town overnight, especially if the Ferris wheel looks like it's made of black iron and bone. I ran away from home at 17 after my stepdad put me in the hospital for the 3rd time. Living on the streets wasn't much better, but at least I could choose when to run. That's how I ended up in Somerset when Grimshaw's rolled into town. I was sleeping in an abandoned warehouse when the carnival started setting up in the empty lot next door. By sunrise, it looked like it had been there forever. The work wasn't hard at first. I helped set up booths, ran the cotton candy machine, and cleaned up after closing. The other workers, we call ourselves midnight children, seemed normal enough, though none of them would talk about how they got here. There was May, who ran the fortune-telling booth and never took off her gloves. Tom, the knife thrower, who wouldn't eat or drink anything but black coffee, and Riley, who worked the Hall of Mirrors and always wore sunglasses, even at night. Everything changed during my 4th week when Mr. Grimshaw promoted me to the freak show. "You've got the right look in your eyes, J.D.," he said, his breath smelling like burnt sugar and copper, the look of someone who understands pain. That should have been my first real warning. The freak show wasn't what you'd expect. No bearded ladies or sword swallowers here. Instead, we had other things. Lunda, the artist who hadn't eaten in 30 years but never died. The puppet master, whose marionettes danced without strings and screamed in children's voices. And the twins, God, the twins, I still can't talk about what they do to the volunteers from the audience. But it was Sheena from the carousel who really opened my eyes to what was happening. I found her crying behind the ride one night, mascara running down her face like black rain. "I used to be in the audience," she whispered. 3 years ago, I made the mistake of riding the carousel at midnight. The horses, they weren't wooden anymore, J.D. They were flesh and blood, and they were suffering. I tried to help them, and that's when Mr. Grimshaw found me. I didn't believe her then, but last week I stayed late to repair one of the horses. As the clock struck midnight, I watched it transform. The paint became skin, the poles became bones, and those glass eyes, they turned real and looked right at me. It whimpered, "Help us," in a voice that sounded horrifyingly human. I started noticing other things after that. How the cotton candy machine sometimes spun out strands that looked like veins. How the funhouse music contained screams if you listened closely enough. How none of the midnight children ever seemed to age or leave, but the carnival always had new faces among its workers. Yesterday, I tried to quit. Mr. Grimshaw just laughed and showed me my contract again. The words had changed. They were written in a language I didn't recognize, but somehow I could still read them. My soul wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the carnival, just like the others. I'm writing this now because I can feel myself changing. This morning, I found sawdust in my bed. and my skin feels like it's hardening into wood. I think I know which carousel horse I'm going to become, but maybe, just maybe, someone will read this and stay away, or better yet, help us. If you see Grimshaw's Midnight Carnival in your town, run. Don't look at the lights, don't listen to the music, and whatever you do, don't sign anything. We're all still here, trapped in this eternal show, performing for the crowds night after night. And soon, I'll be joining the performance permanently. The copy music is getting louder now, and I can hear Mr. Grimshaw's footsteps approaching my trailer. My fingers are starting to stiffen, and splinters are pushing through my skin. This is my last warning to anyone who might read it. Some tickets cost more than money, and some shows never end. Just remember, those aren't mechanical animals you're riding on the carousel. They're us. They've always been us. I need to write this down while I still can. All my thoughts are still somewhat my own. The logbook entries from the previous keeper make more sense now. Those rambling passages about voices in the waves and shadows that move against the tide. I used to think he was just another poor bastard who let the isolation get to him. Now I know better. Now I understand why they found him in the lighthouse tower, his fingernails worn to bloody stumps from clawing at the walls. My name is James Thompson, Jim to the few folks who know me, and I've been the keeper of the Black Rock Lighthouse for exactly 37 days. The isolation doesn't bother me. After 20 years at sea, I'm used to long stretches with nothing but salt water for company. But there's something different about this place, something wrong. It started with small things. Items moved when I wasn't looking. The spare lantern I always keep by my bed would somehow end up in the kitchen. My coffee mug would be in a different spot than where I left it. I blamed it on fatigue at first. Keeping a lighthouse running is demanding work, especially in winter. Then I found the journal. It was tucked away behind a loose brick in the basement, wrapped in oilcloth that had gone stiff with age. The previous keeper's log, but not the official one. This was personal, filled with increasingly frantic entries that spanned his 3 months here. The first few pages were normal enough. Routine maintenance notes, weather observations, the occasional complaint about supplies running low. But then the tone changed. March 15th. The waves speak at night, not in words exactly, but in patterns. There's meaning there if you listen long enough. God help me, I've started answering. I should have stopped reading right then. Should have sealed that journal back up and forgotten about it. But I couldn't, because by then I'd started hearing them too. It's not just voices. There's something in the water. I see it during my morning checks when I'm cleaning the salt spray off the lantern room windows. Dark shapes moving beneath the surface, following patterns that don't match any tide or current I've ever known. Sometimes they seem to form letters, like something's trying to communicate. Last week, during a storm, I swear I saw a face in the waves. Not human, at least not entirely. The eyes were too large, too knowing. It stared at me for what felt like hours, and I stared back, unable to look away. When I finally managed to break free of its gaze, 8 hours had passed. The lamp had gone out, and 3 ships had run aground on the rocks below. I called the Coast Guard about the shipwrecks, of course, but when they arrived, there was no trace of any vessels, no debris, no bodies, nothing, just the rocks and the endless waves. The officer gave me an odd look when I insisted on what I'd seen, said there hadn't been any ships reported missing in the area. That's when I started keeping my own journal. The previous keeper's entries got worse as they went on. He wrote about dreams where he was underwater, but could breathe just fine. About voices calling him to join them in the depths. About figures standing in his room at night, dripping seawater that vanished by morning. I'm having those dreams now too, but it's the lighthouse itself that's changed the most. The spiral staircase seems longer every day. Last night, I counted the steps from bottom to top, 147. This morning, there were 184. I know how insane that sounds, but I swear it's true. The walls feel different too, softer somehow, almost organic. Sometimes I catch them pulsing in the corner of my eye like they're breathing. The worst part? I'm starting to understand the patterns, the way the shadows move, the rhythm of the waves, the whispers in the dark. They're all part of something bigger, something ancient, something that's been here long before this lighthouse was built and will be here long after it's gone. I found a note in my own handwriting yesterday, but I have no memory of writing it. Just 2 words over and over. Below waiting, below waiting, below waiting. The ink was mixed with seawater. The supply boat is due next week. I should hold out until then, ask for a replacement. But every time I think about leaving, the voices get louder. They're singing now, a melody that makes my teeth hurt and my vision blur. They're promising things, wonderful, terrible things that I can barely comprehend. The previous keeper's final entry was a mess of scrawled symbols and seawater-stained paper, but there was one clear line at the very end. The lighthouse isn't keeping something out. It's keeping something in. I think I finally understand what he meant. The light isn't meant to warn ships away from the rocks. It's a beacon, drawing them closer, drawing them to whatever lives in these waters, whatever has been trapped here for God knows how long. And now it wants me to turn out the light. I can hear footsteps on the stairs now, slow and wet, more than one set. The walls are definitely breathing. I can see them expand and contract in time with the waves. The shadows in the corner are taking shape, and I know if I turn around, I'll see them. The journal entry ends here. 3 days later, the supply boat found the lighthouse dark. The only trace of James Thompson was a trail of seawater leading from the top of the tower to the rocks below. No body was ever recovered. The lighthouse remains operational under automated systems. Local sailors claim that on stormy nights, they can sometimes see a figure in the lantern room watching the waves. I've worked at the Grand Majestic Theater for 15 years, and I've never told anyone about what happened during my first month here. Not because I didn't want to. Believe me, there were countless nights I wanted to scream it from the rooftops, but because I made a promise to her. But now that she's back, now that it's happening again, I need to break that promise. I need to tell you everything. My name is Benjamin Valdez, though everyone calls me Ben. I started working at the Grand Majestic back in 2009, fresh out of technical school with dreams of making it big in theater production. The Grand Majestic wasn't exactly Broadway, but for a small city like ours, it was as close as you could get. The building itself is this gorgeous piece of 1920s architecture, all gold leaf and red velvet, with enough history to fill a dozen books and enough shadows to hide 1,000 secrets. I still remember my first day. Janet, our stage manager, gave me the tour. She was this tiny woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue, but there was something maternal about her, too. "Listen carefully, Ben," she said as we walked through the wings, "because these are the rules that will keep you alive in this business." I laughed at that. I shouldn't have. The rules were simple enough. Never whistle in the theater, always leave a ghost light on, never say Macbeth inside the building, and most important, never, ever go into box 5. I figured they were just theater superstitions, the kind of traditions that get passed down like family recipes. Janet must have seen the skepticism on my face because she grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks. "I'm serious, Ben, especially about box 5. That's where it happened." When I asked what it was, Janet just shook her head and changed the subject. But later that week, Marlon, one of the older stagehands, filled me in. Back in 1938, a young actress named Eleanor Hayes had been preparing for her debut as Ophelia in Hamlet. She was supposedly brilliant, a rising star, but on opening night, she never made it to the stage. They found her in box 5, hanging from the chandelier mounting. The official story was stage fright-induced suicide, but Marlon said there were rumors about the director being involved. I wish I could say I took it seriously then, but I was 22 and invincible, too focused on proving myself to worry about ghost stories. That changed during our first production of the season, A Streetcar Named Desire. Everything was going fine until Tech Week. That's when the whispers started. At first, it was just little things. Props moving between scenes, costumes being found in the wrong places, the temperature dropping randomly in certain spots. But then, Shara, our Blanche Dubois, started forgetting her lines, not just stumbling over them, but completely blanking out, staring into box 5 like she was seeing something none of us could. I was working the fly system one night alone in the rigging when I first heard the singing. It was beautiful, but wrong somehow, like a record playing at half speed. It was coming from box 5. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew the rules, but I did anyway. There was someone sitting there, a woman in an old-fashioned dress, her long dark hair hiding her face. She was swaying slightly, still singing. Then she looked up at me. God, I'll never forget this. Her face was just wrong, like someone had tried to draw a face from memory, but got all the proportions twisted. I nearly fell from the rigging. When I looked back, she was gone, but the singing continued, softer now, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. The next day, Shara quit, just walked out in the middle of rehearsal, tears streaming down her face, saying she couldn't do it anymore. She kept talking about how she wouldn't let her perform, how she said Shara wasn't worthy of the stage. Janet pulled me aside after everyone left. "You've seen her, haven't you?" she asked. When I nodded, she sighed. "Eleanor doesn't like competition. She never got her chance to perform, so she makes sure no one else can either. At least no one she thinks isn't good enough." "But why now?" I asked. "Why this show?" "Because," Janet said, looking older than I'd ever seen her, "this is the first show we've done since I announced my retirement. She knows I won't be here to protect everyone anymore." That's when the pieces started falling into place. Janet wasn't just our stage manager. She was our guardian, keeping Eleanor's spirit in check somehow. And now that she was leaving, I wish I could say things got better. They didn't. Our replacement Blanche lasted 2 rehearsals before having a complete breakdown. The third didn't even make it through her first read-through. Props started falling during scenes, lights would explode without warning, and that singing, that terrible, beautiful singing, got louder every night. Then came opening night. We hadn't even found a replacement Blanche yet, but the director insisted the show must go on. We were in the middle of final preparations when Janet disappeared. I found her in box 5, unconscious, with bruises around her neck in the shape of fingerprints. That's when I did something stupid. Something brave, maybe, but definitely stupid. I went back to box 5 that night, alone. I had this crazy idea that I could reason with Eleanor, make her understand that times had changed, that theater was different now. She was waiting for me, not the twisted version I'd seen before, but as she must have looked in life, young, beautiful, and so sad. "They don't understand," she said, her voice like crushed velvet. "They don't respect the craft. They don't bleed for it like we did." "Then teach them," I said. "Help them understand. You are going to be brilliant. Be brilliant now as a teacher, not a terror." I'd love to say that fixed everything, that Eleanor saw the light and stopped haunting our theater, but real life, even life with ghosts, isn't that simple. We made a deal instead. She would let the shows go on, let the actors perform, but only if we promised 2 things. To maintain the old traditions, the ghost light, the whistle rule, all of it, and to keep box 5 empty, reserved for her. That was 15 years ago. Janet recovered, retired as planned, and I took over as stage manager. We've had dozens of successful shows since then, with only the occasional mysterious mishap. Eleanor kept her part of the bargain, and we kept ours. Until now. Our new director decided the old superstitions were holding us back. He sold tickets to box 5 for our upcoming production of Hamlet Eleanor's show. And last night, I heard the singing again, louder than ever before. Last night, during tech rehearsal, I heard the singing again. Not the beautiful melody from before, but something different. Broken, wrong, like shattered glass being dragged across piano strings. I'm in my office now, staring at tomorrow's ticket sales on my computer screen. 6 seats sold in box 5. 6 people who have no idea what's coming. The ghost light just went out, and for the first time in 15 years, I can smell lavender and rope. I've spent my entire career studying the secrets of the past, but nothing could have prepared me for what I found beneath Stonehenge. My name is Dr. Elia Marlowe, and this is likely to be my final testimony. If you're reading this, it means I failed to seal the horror I've unleashed upon our world. It all began on a crisp autumn morning, just weeks before my planned retirement. The fog clung to the ancient stones like a shroud, as if trying to keep their secrets hidden. I'd grown up in the shadow of these monoliths, their mystery a constant whisper in my ear. My grandmother used to tell me stories of the old ways of druids and sacrifices, but even her wildest tales paled in comparison to the truth. I remember the day I decided to become an archaeologist. I was just a boy, no more than 10, playing in the fields near Stonehenge. My friends and I were digging for treasure as children do, when my small shovel struck something hard. It was a piece of pottery, nothing special to the untrained eye, but to me, it was a window into the past. I ran home, clutching my find, and declared to my bemused parents that I would uncover all of Stonehenge's secrets. How naive I was then, how innocent of the horrors that lay dormant beneath the earth. Over the decades, I built my career on studying Neolithic sites across Britain, but Stonehenge always called me back. It was an obsession, a siren song I couldn't resist. I published papers, gave lectures, and slowly climbed the academic ladder, all while feeling that the true secret of the stones remained just out of reach. When the opportunity came for this final excavation, I jumped at the chance. Our team had been granted unprecedented access to conduct ground-penetrating radar surveys around the site. It was supposed to be my swan song, a final contribution to the field I dedicated my life to. If only I'd known then what I know now, I would have walked away and never looked back. The first week of the survey was uneventful. We meticulously gridded the area, taking readings and compiling data. My younger colleagues joked about finding hidden chambers or ancient treasures, but I learned long ago to temper my expectations. Archaeology is often a game of patience, of piecing together the smallest clues to form a larger picture. It was on the 8th day that everything changed. The first anomaly appeared on our screens like a dark smudge, easy to dismiss as a glitch or a natural formation, but as we refined our scans, a pattern emerged. A perfect circle far too precise to be natural, hidden just meters below the surface. My heart raced with excitement, my scientific mind already conjuring images of hidden chambers and ancient artifacts. We began the excavation with painstaking care, every centimeter of soil meticulously documented and preserved. The local press buzzed with speculation, but we kept our findings tightly under wraps. Each layer we removed seemed to vibrate with a strange energy, as if the very earth was holding its breath in anticipation. It wasn't until we reached the capstone that I felt the first inkling of dread. The stone was unlike anything I'd ever seen, darker than obsidian, with strange shifting patterns that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. And the symbols carved into its surface, they weren't like any known ancient script. They seemed to writhe and squirm, making my eyes water if I stared too long. I should have stopped there. I should have reburied everything and warned the world never to dig here again. But curiosity, that damned human trait that's led us to our greatest discoveries and our darkest hours, pushed me forward. It took our entire team to shift the capstone, and as it grated across the ground, a gust of stale, fetid air rushed up from below. The stench was indescribable, not the musty smell of an ancient tomb, but something far older, far wronger. It carried with it whispers, barely audible, in a language that made my skin crawl. The chamber below was vast, far larger than should have been possible given the area we'd excavated. Its walls were lined with the same dark stone as the capstone, pulsing with a sickly greenish light that seemed to absorb the beams from our flashlights. And at its center stood an altar, if you could call it that, a twisted mass of stone and metal shaped into a form that hurt the mind to look upon. I approached it, drawn by an impulse I couldn't explain. The whispers grew louder, and I realized with horror that they were coming from inside my own head. Images flashed before my eyes, vast, incomprehensible beings that existed before time itself, using our reality as a playground, a testing ground, a doorway. I saw great cities of non-Euclidean geometry built by beings of such alien aspect that my mind rebelled at the sight of them. I witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations on distant worlds, each one a mere experiment, in the grand designs of these eldritch entities, and I saw Earth, a precious blue marble there, nothing more than a speck of dust in their unfathomable cosmic game. And Stonehenge, it wasn't just a religious monument or an astronomical calendar. It was a lock, a seal keeping something out or in. The standing stones above were keys, their placement a complex mechanism that, when aligned properly, would open a gateway to somewhere else. A place beyond our comprehension, where the laws of physics were mere suggestions and madness was the only sane response. I don't know how long I stood there, my mind reeling from visions no human was meant to comprehend. When I came to my senses, I was alone in the chamber. My team, God, my team. I found what was left of them, scattered around the site, their bodies twisted into impossible shapes, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. Dr. Sarah Chin, my brilliant protégée, lay crumpled at the base of one of the stones, her limbs bent at angles that defied anatomy. Jack Pearson, our geophysicist, was found fused into the very stone he'd spent years studying, his flesh seamlessly melding with the ancient rock. And poor Tom Davis, barely more than an intern, his eyes were gone, replaced by swirling vortexes of that same sickly green light that pulsed within the chamber. I stumbled away from the carnage, my mind teetering on the brink of sanity. The weight of what I'd uncovered pressed down on me, threatening to crush my very soul, but I knew I couldn't succumb. Not yet. Someone had to warn the world, had to try to contain this madness before it spread. I've sealed the entrance as best I could, using a mixture of modern concrete and ancient rituals I half remembered from my grandmother's stories, but I fear it's only a temporary measure. The alignment is coming. I can feel it in my bones, in the thrumming of the air itself. Whatever lies on the other side of that gateway is awakening, stretching, preparing to step through. Each night since that fateful discovery, my dreams have been plagued by visions of what's to come. I see the stones of Stonehenge vibrating with otherworldly energy, the very fabric of reality tearing apart as the gateway opens. Tentacles of impossible size and geometry slide through the breach, followed by entities so vast and alien that the mere sight of them drives people mad. I've tried to warn my colleagues, the authorities, anyone who will listen, but who would believe the ravings of an old man, especially one who can't produce any evidence? The chamber remains sealed, and I dare not open it again, even to prove my story. The risk is too great. So, I'm writing this account in the hope that someone will find it, will understand the danger. Stonehenge must be destroyed, the ground beneath it sown with salt and iron. But even as I write these words, I can feel my resolve weakening. The whispers are getting louder, more insistent. They promise knowledge, power, transcendence. Part of me wants to stay to see what emerges when the stars align and the gateway opens. That's how they get you, I suppose. Not with threats or brute force, but with temptation. The offer of answers to questions we were never meant to ask. I find myself drawn back to the site night after night, standing just beyond the perimeter, staring at the looming silhouettes of the stones against the starry sky. Sometimes I swear I can see shapes moving between them, things that vanish when I try to focus on them. And always there are the whispers. They tell me I'm special, that I was chosen for this, that my lifetime of study and dedication was all in preparation for this moment. They promised me knowledge beyond human comprehension, power beyond mortal reckoning. All I have to do is return to the chamber to stand before the altar and speak the words that now burn in my mind. But I resist, clinging to the last shreds of my humanity. I think of my granddaughter, of the world I want her to inherit, not one of chaos and madness, but of beauty and wonder. And so I fight, even as I feel my grip on reality slipping day by day. If you're reading this, heed my warning. Stay away from Stonehenge. Forget the mysteries, the allure of discovery. Some secrets are meant to stay buried, some doors left unopened. And if you hear whispers on the wind promising you the world, run. Run and don't look back. For what lies beneath Stonehenge is older than humanity, older than Earth itself, and it hungers for a way back in. I don't know how much longer I can resist the call. Each day is a battle against the knowledge that burns within me, threatening to consume what's left of my sanity. I've made arrangements for this manuscript to be delivered to multiple sources should anything happen to me. It's my last hope, my final stand against the darkness that looms on the horizon. To whoever reads this, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my hubris, for thinking I could uncover the secrets of Stonehenge without consequence. I'm sorry for unleashing a horror upon this world that I cannot hope to contain. And I'm sorry for the burden I now place upon you, the knowledge of what lurks beneath those ancient stones. The alignment is coming. The gateway will open. And when it does, may whatever God still listens have mercy on us all. This is Dr. Elia Marlowe signing off for the last time. Remember Stonehenge not as a wonder of the ancient world, but as a warning. Some doors are meant to stay closed, some secrets never meant to see the light of day. Farewell and good luck. You're going to need it. I never should have opened that chest. The worn, leather-bound journal sat in my lap, its pages yellowed with age, the scent of musty parchment filling my nostrils. My hands trembled as I traced the faded script on the cover, the true account of Rowan O, as witnessed by Eleanor Dare, my ancestors' words, my legacy, my curse. For years, I'd searched for answers about my family's connection to the lost colony of Roanoke. As a historian specializing in early American settlements, I'd always felt a pull toward that mysterious chapter in our nation's past. But I never imagined the horror that awaited me. It started with the dreams. Visions of dense, mist-shrouded forests. Whispers in a language I couldn't understand. The sensation of being watched by countless unseen eyes. I chalked it up to stress from my obsession with my research. But then I found the chest hidden in the attic of my grandmother's old Virginia home. The ancient oak box had been passed down through generations, its contents a closely guarded secret. When the lock finally gave way beneath my trembling fingers, I knew I'd stumbled upon something momentous. But I had no idea how it would shatter everything I thought I knew about history and about myself. The first few entries in Eleanor's journal were unremarkable. She wrote of the journey across the Atlantic, the hope for a new life in the new world. But as I turned the brittle pages, the tone shifted. Eleanor's neat script grew frantic, the ink blotched with what looked unsettlingly like dried blood. August 18th, 1587. We have been here but a month, and already something is terribly wrong. The forest watches us. It hungers. God help us all. I rid on, my heart pounding. Eleanor told a tale far more terrifying than any disappearance. The colonists hadn't vanished. They'd been claimed, An ancient entity dwelling in the primordial forests of the New World had awakened, hungry for flesh and devotion. It spoke to them in the dreams, promising power and immortality in exchange for sacrifice. Some resisted, Eleanor among them, but as crops failed and children sickened, desperation set in. One by one, the settlers succumbed to the entity's whispers. They ventured into the woods, never to return as humans. September 3rd, 1587. Thomas ventured into the trees at dawn. We heard his screams until nightfall. What emerged, wearing his skin, was not my husband. Those who remained were transformed, their bodies twisted into something inhuman, their minds warped by eldritch knowledge. Eleanor's descriptions made my stomach churn, limbs elongating into branch-like appendages, skin hardening into bark, eyes multiplying across torsos, faces contorting into inhuman masks. The disappearance of the colony was a cover-up, a ritual enacted by the last few unchanged survivors to contain the entity and its transformed acolytes. They erased all trace of Roanoke, sealing away the horror they'd unleashed. We are the last. The entity sleeps, but it is not defeated. We have bound it with blood and sacrifice, but the seal will not hold forever. To those of my blood who may read this in years to come, beware, the forest remembers, and it will call to you. But rituals fade, seals weaken, and bloodlines remember. As I read Eleanor's frantic warnings, I felt a stirring in my blood, an awakening. The entity had slumbered these long centuries, but now it called to me, its last remaining descendant, the one who could complete the circle. I tried to resist. I burned the journal, fled across the country, sought help from experts in fields both scientific and occult. But the dreams grew stronger. The whispers became a cacophony, and slowly I began to change. It started with my skin. Patches grew mottled and rough like tree bark. My hair fell out in clumps, replaced by twisting vines. My bones ached as they elongated and warped. I caught glimpses of myself in mirrors and no longer recognized the thing staring back. The entity's voice grew clearer with each passing day. It showed me visions of power beyond imagining, of secrets hidden since the dawn of time. All I had to do was return to Roanoke, to take my place among my transformed kin, to complete the ritual and usher in a new age of terror. I resisted for as long as I could. I barricaded myself in my apartment, covered all the mirrors, tried to drown out the whispers with endless loops of white noise. But the call of the forest was relentless. It seeped into my dreams, my thoughts, the very marrow of my changing bones. One night, driven to the brink of madness, I found myself standing at the edge of a dense forest. I had no memory of how I'd gotten there, but I knew with terrible certainty where I was. Roanoke Island, home. The trees seemed to part before me, creating a path into the depths of the woods. As I stepped forward, my feet sinking into the loamy soil, I felt a sense of homecoming, of rightness. The whispers in my mind crescendoed into a triumphant roar. Deep in the heart of the forest, I found them, my kin, the lost colonists of Roanoke, transformed beyond recognition into creatures of bark, vine, and hungering shadow. They welcomed me with open arms, dozens of arms twisting and grasping. I should have been terrified. I should have run screaming. But as the entity's presence washed over me, filling me with ancient, terrible knowledge, I felt only peace. This was where I belonged, where we all belonged now. As I write these final words, I can feel the last vestiges of my humanity slipping away. My fingers are elongating, bark creeping up my arms. Soon I will join my brethren in the deep woods, guardians of a slumbering horror. I'm writing this now as a warning, as a confession. My mind is still my own, but I don't know for how much longer. I can feel the pull of the forest, the call of something ancient and hungry stirring beneath the soil of Roanoke Island. If you're reading this, it may already be too late. The entity is awakening. The lost colonists are stirring in their ageless slumber, and I am going home. To those who come seeking answers about Roanoke, I beg you, stay away. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some truths are too horrible to face. The wind outside my window sounds like whispers now. Branches scrape against glass with fingernail-like precision. I have to go. It's calling me. Remember Roanoke. Remember and beware. For the forest is patient. The forest is hungry. And the forest never forgets its own. I've carried this secret for far too long. The weight of it has bent my spine and whitened my hair, but it's nothing compared to the burden of knowing what's out there waiting in those cursed mountains. You've all heard of the Dyatlov Pass incident, I'm sure. 9 hikers found dead under mysterious circumstances. But what you don't know, what they've kept hidden all these years, is that there was a 10th member of our group, me. My name is Nikolai Andreev, and I'm the sole survivor of what really happened in the Ural Mountains on that frigid February night in 1959. I was 24 then, a student like the others, but with one crucial difference. I'd spent my childhood summers with my grandfather, an old hunter who taught me the ways of the taiga. Those skills saved my life, but sometimes I wonder if death wouldn't have been kinder. We were young, ambitious, ready to conquer the world one mountain at a time. The trek to Mount Otorten was supposed to be challenging, but not impossible. How could we have known we were walking into the hunting grounds of something ancient and hungry? I remember the day we set out like it was yesterday. The sky was a pale, wintry blue, and our breath frosted in the air as we shouldered our packs. Igor Dyatlov, our unofficial leader, checked our supplies one last time. His confidence was infectious, and we all felt invincible. Yuri strummed his mandolin, and Lyudmila's laughter rang out across the snow. We were 10 friends on an adventure, blissfully unaware of the horror that awaited us. The first few days were uneventful, filled with the kind of camaraderie that only comes from shared challenges. We'd huddle around the campfire at night, sharing stories and dreams. Tatiana talked about the thesis she was working on, while Alexandra regaled us with jokes that had us clutching our sides with laughter. Those moments of joy make what followed all the more terrible. As we ventured deeper into the pass, the landscape began to change subtly. The trees became more gnarled, their branches reaching out like grasping fingers. An unnatural silence fell over the land. The wind stopped whispering through the pines, and even our breath seemed muffled in the still air. It was Igor who first sensed something was wrong. "We're being watched," he said, his eyes darting nervously across the snowy slopes. We laughed it off, but a seed of unease had been planted. That night, as I took my turn on watch, I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were boring into me from the darkness beyond our camp. The next day, we found strange tracks in the snow, too large for any animal we knew, with an odd shuffling gait that made no sense. Rustam, our resident expert on local wildlife, was baffled. "I've never seen anything like this," he muttered, a worried crease between his brows. That night, Huddled in our tents, we heard it, a low, pulsating hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It taunted us, burrowing into our minds, setting our teeth on edge. Eerie suggested it was just the wind, but we all knew better. There was something out there, circling our camp. None of us slept well. In the morning, Lyudmila reported having vivid, terrifying nightmares. "I saw something in the mountains," she said, her voice shaking. "Something old, something waiting." We tried to comfort her, but her words had struck a chord of primal fear in all of us. As we continued our trek, the feeling of wrongness grew stronger. The landscape seemed to shift when we weren't looking directly at it. More than once, I could have sworn I saw shadows moving against the white of the snow, only for them to vanish when I turned my head. On our final night, though we didn't know it then, we made camp on the slopes of Kolat Shachel, a name which translates to Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language. That should have been warning enough, but we were tired, cold, and eager to make progress. I woke to screams. The night was alive with chaos, tent fabric ripping, people shouting in terror. I burst out into the frigid air and saw. I still struggle to describe it. It wasn't a creature, not in any sense we understand. It was like a tear in reality, a writhing mass of darkness that hurt to look at directly. Tentacles of shadow whipped through the air, and where they touched, the very fabric of the world seemed to warp and twist. My friends were running, scattering in all directions. I saw Lyudmila stumble, her body contorting unnaturally as the thing's influence took hold. Zina and Semyon were clawing at their own faces, driven mad by what they'd seen. Igor was shouting orders, trying to rally us, but his words were swallowed by the otherworldly hum that now filled the air. I ran. God help me, I ran. My grandfather's training took over. Find cover, stay low, control your breathing. I wedged myself into a crevice between two boulders, praying to whatever might listen that the thing wouldn't find me. For hours, I listened to the screams of my friends echoing across the mountain. One by one, they fell silent. The hum grew louder, filling my head until I thought my skull would split. I bit down on my glove to keep from crying out, tasting blood and wool and fear. When dawn finally broke, I emerged to a scene of impossible horror. Bodies strewn across the snow, broken in ways that defied explanation. Some looked as though they'd been crushed by an immense weight, while others bore no visible marks at all. Their faces were frozen in expressions of utmost terror, and always that lingering sense of wrongness in the air. I searched desperately for survivors, but found none. The entity, whatever it was, had vanished with the night, but I could feel its presence lingering like oil on water. This was its territory, and we had been nothing but prey. Gathering what supplies I could, I began the long, harrowing journey down the mountain. Every shadow, every unexplained sound set my heart racing. I felt certain that at any moment that tear, in reality, would reappear, and I would join my friends in whatever lay beyond. I made my way down the mountain in a day, my mind struggling to process what I'd witnessed. When I finally reached civilization, I tried to tell them, the police, the search parties, anyone who would listen. But they didn't believe me. How could they? It was easier to blame the cold, or an avalanche, or even Soviet military tests. A week after I'd given my statement, 2 men in dark suits came to see me. They knew everything about the entity, about similar incidents stretching back centuries. They showed me files photographs of other expeditions that had vanished in the same region. Some dated back to the Tsarist era, yellowed pages filled with accounts of shadows that walk and the watcher in the mountains. They made it clear I was to never speak of what I'd seen. The world wasn't ready for the truth. They offered me a choice: keep silent and live, or persist in telling my story and face consequences. The threat was clear in their eyes. For decades, I've kept my silence, watching from afar as theories and documentaries tried to explain what happened to my friends. I've seen the photos of the search parties, the confused reports trying to make sense of the senseless. Every time I see those familiar faces in old photographs, Igor's confident smile, Lyudmila's bright eyes, my heart breaks anew. I've tried to move on, to build a life. I married, had children, pursued a quiet career far from the mountains. But the memories never faded. On cold nights, I still wake up in a cold sweat, the echo of that otherworldly hum ringing in my ears. Over the years, I've done my own research, quietly and carefully. I found whispers of similar incidents across the world, expeditions that vanished without a trace, lone travelers found in impossible circumstances, always in remote places, always with the same sense of wrongness surrounding them. The thing in Dyatlov Pass is still there. I feel it sometimes in my dreams. The otherworldly hum, the sense of being watched. It's waiting, as it has for millennia, for more unsuspecting souls to wander into its domain. I thought about going back, of trying to find proof, or maybe even confront it. But the fear is too great. I know that if I return to those mountains, I won't come back. I'm an old man now, and I fear what might happen if this secret dies with me. The world has changed. Maybe people are ready to hear the truth, to understand that there are things out there beyond our comprehension. Or maybe I'm just a coward, finally trying to unburden myself of this terrible knowledge. I don't expect you to believe me. Sometimes I'm not sure I believe it myself. But the next time you're in the wilderness and feel that prickle on the back of your neck, that certainty that something's watching you from just beyond the tree line, remember my warning. Not all predators in this world are ones we can understand, and some hungers can never be satisfied. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains officially unsolved, but I know the truth. I've lived with it for over 60 years, and as I write these words, I can't shake the feeling that somewhere in the cold peaks of the Ural, something ancient and patient is stirring once more. God help us all if it ever decides to leave its mountain home. The Bermuda Triangle isn't just a place where things disappear, it's where they're taken. I know because I was one of them for 42 years. I was trapped in a nightmare beyond imagination. Now that I'm back, I almost wish I'd stayed lost. The horrors I've seen, the things I've experienced, they've changed me in ways I can't even begin to describe, but I have to try. People need to know the truth about what's out there waiting in that timeless abyss. My name is Jack Hawkins. In 1982, I was a 28-year-old sailor with salt in my veins and adventure in my heart. I'd grown up on the docks of Miami, learning to tie knots before I could write my name. The sea was my home, my love, my life. Little did I know it would become my prison. It was supposed to be a routine cargo run to Bermuda. Clear skies, calm seas, perfect sailing weather. I remember joking with my crew as we entered the triangle. We'd all heard the stories, of course, but none of us really believed them. They were just tall tales to scare the greenhorns, right? I remember checking my watch as we crossed into those infamous waters, 2:14 p.m., July 17th, 1982. That was the last time I saw a clock for over 4 decades. The change was sudden. One moment, we were cutting through blue waves under a blazing sun. The next, we were enveloped in an impenetrable fog. The air grew thick, almost gelatinous, and breathing became difficult, like trying to inhale syrup. I tried to call out to my crew, but my voice sounded muffled, as if I were shouting underwater. Then came the silence, the constant hum of the ship's engines, the lapping of waves against the hull. All of it vanished in an instant. In that deafening quiet, I heard something else. Whispers, countless voices speaking in languages I'd never heard, some that didn't even sound human. It was like listening to the murmur of a crowded room, but the words were all wrong. The cadences were alien and unsettling. I don't know how long we drifted in that fog. Time. It didn't work right there. Sometimes the sun would rise and set in what felt like minutes. Other times, the night would stretch on for what seemed like weeks. My watch had stopped, its hands frozen at 2:14, but it wasn't just broken. Sometimes I'd look at it, and the hands would be in different positions, as if it was trying to tell time but couldn't quite remember how. The fog played tricks on our minds. We'd see things, impossible things, islands that appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye, sea creatures larger than our ship, their bodies twisting in ways that defied physics. Once, I swear, I saw another ship sailing alongside us. It looked ancient, like something out of a history book. I called out to it, and for a moment, I locked eyes with a man on its deck. He looked as terrified as I felt. Then the ship was gone, swallowed by the fog. It was during one of those endless nights that I first saw them. We called them time wraiths. Imagine a shadow-given form, constantly shifting and writhing. They moved through the air like oil through water, leaving trails of distorted reality in their wake. When they passed nearby, I could feel time stretching and compressing around me. One moment, I'd be young again, the next, ancient and withered. The pain was excruciating, like my very atoms were being pulled apart and slammed back together. The wraiths took my crew one by one. I'd hear a scream cut short, and another sailor would be gone. I don't know if they were killed or something else. All I know is that eventually I was alone on a ghost ship, drifting through an endless foggy void. I learned to hide from the wraiths. I discovered that they couldn't see me if I held my breath and remained perfectly still. So I'd spend hours, maybe days, crouched in dark corners, not daring to move a muscle as they glided by. The hunger and thirst were maddening, but fear kept me motionless. Sometimes I'd emerge from hiding to find that weeks had passed in what felt like hours to me. Other times, I'd hide for what seemed like months, only to come out and find that mere minutes had elapsed. But the true horror wasn't the wraiths. It was the visions. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw glimpses of other worlds, other times, ancient cities made of crystal, vast deserts of purple sand, oceans of liquid fire, and always I saw my home, Miami, changing, growing, evolving as the years passed me by. I watched my family age, saw my parents die, witnessed my little sister get married and have children of her own. It was like a cruel movie playing behind my eyelids, showing me everything I was missing. There were others trapped in the triangle with me, not just from my time, but from all throughout history. I met a Roman centurion, his armor corroded by time, but his body unchanged. We couldn't speak the same language, but the terror in his eyes needed no translation. I encountered a pilot from World War II, still frantically searching for her squadron, and once, in what seemed like a fever dream, I spoke with a woman in strange futuristic clothing who claimed to be from the year 2157. We were all trapped in the same timeless prison, our stories frozen while the world moved on without us. I don't know how I escaped. One moment I was huddled in the ship's hold, hiding from a particularly persistent wraith. The next, I was standing on a beach in the Florida Keys, coughing up seawater. A family having a picnic nearby called 911. When the paramedics arrived, they couldn't believe their eyes. To them, I was a living ghost, a man who hadn't aged a day since he disappeared in 1982. The world had moved on without me. My parents were gone. My little sister was a grandmother. The docks I grew up on had been replaced by luxury condos. Everything was louder, faster, more crowded. I felt like a relic, a man out of time. The technology alone was overwhelming. Smartphones, social media, self-driving cars. It was like I'd stepped into one of those sci-fi movies we used to watch on the ship during long voyages. The doctor couldn't explain my condition. Physically, I was the same 28-year-old who had set sail in 1982. But my mind, that was different. I had memories spanning decades, experiences that had aged me far beyond my years. The government got involved, of course. I spent months being debriefed, tested, studied. They wanted to know everything about the triangle, about the wraiths, about the other dimension. But how could I explain the inexplicable? How could I make them understand what it felt like to be unmoored in time? But that wasn't the worst of it, because I brought something back with me. The wraiths, they followed me. I see them sometimes out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement in a mirror, a shadow where there shouldn't be one. They're hunting me, and they're learning. At first, they could only manifest for split seconds in our world, but they're getting stronger. Last week, I saw one fully materialize in my backyard. It hovered there for almost a minute before dissipating. They're figuring out how to exist in our reality, and I'm terrified of what will happen when they master it. I've tried to warn people, but who would believe me? A man who claims he was trapped in another dimension for 40 years. They chalk it up to trauma, to PTSD. They don't understand the danger we're all in. The nightmares are the worst. Every night, I'm back in that fog, running from the wraiths. But now, the fog is spreading, engulfing cities, countries, the whole world. I wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, convinced that this time it wasn't just a dream. I started noticing things, subtle changes in the world around me. Sometimes, just for a moment, time seems to slow down or speed up. I'll see people freeze in mid-motion or move at impossible speeds. Once, I swear I saw a car on the highway vanish into thin air, only to reappear a few seconds later, its driver oblivious to what had happened. The Bermuda Triangle isn't just a place where things disappear. It's a breach, a weak point between dimensions. And now, thanks to me, that breach is widening. The wraiths are coming, and they're hungry for time. Our time. They feed on it, distort it, destroy it. And with each passing day, their influence grows stronger. I'm telling you, this is a warning. If you see a shadow move in a way it shouldn't, if you feel time slow down or speed up around you, run. Run as fast and as far as you can. Because the wraiths are here, and they're looking for new victims to drag into their timeless abyss. I've tried to find others like me, other survivors of the triangle. I've reached out to conspiracy theorists, paranormal researchers, anyone who might believe my story. A few have listened. Some have even shared their own experiences, tales of lost time, impossible visions, of brushes with entities that defy explanation. We're forming a network, trying to track the Wraith's movements, to understand their patterns. But it feels like we're always one step behind. As for me, I'm going back to the triangle. Maybe if I offer myself up, they'll leave this world alone. Or maybe I'll find a way to close the breach for good. I spent months preparing, studying oceanography, meteorology, even quantum physics. I've chartered a boat, gathered supplies. Tomorrow, I set sail for the coordinates where I disappeared all those years ago. I don't know what I'll find there. Maybe the fog will be waiting for me, ready to swallow me up again. Maybe I'll find nothing but empty ocean. Or maybe, just maybe, I'll find answers. A way to stop the wraiths, to seal the breach, to save our world from the horrors lurking in that timeless dimension. By the time you hear this, I'll be gone, one way or another. This is my last message to the world. Remember my story. Stay away from the triangle. And if you ever find yourself lost in that foggy void, do what I did. Hold your breath, stay still, and pray that the wraiths don't find you. Because once they do, you'll be trapped in a nightmare that lasts for eternity, just like I was. And if you ever feel time slip around you, if you ever catch a glimpse of a writhing shadow in the corner of your eye, remember, they're here. The wraiths have found our world, and they're hungry. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and whatever you do, don't let them catch you. The Phoenix Lights weren't just UFOs, they were the first wave, and they've been here ever since. I know because I was there, coordinating the Air Force's response from Luke Air Force Base. Colonel Jack Harmon, at your service. Well, former colonel. I doubt I'll keep my rank after breaking nearly 3 decades of silence, but the truth needs to come out, even if it destroys me. You've probably heard the official story. Flares, military exercises, mass hysteria. It's all expletive. What really happened that night in March 1997 was the beginning of the end for humanity as we know it, and I've been carrying this burden for far too long. I remember every detail of that night like it was yesterday. The cool desert air, the stars twinkling innocently above, completely unaware of the chaos about to unfold. I was pulling a late shift, nothing unusual for a Friday night. We'd been tracking some anomalous radar signals for the past week, but Brass told us it was probably just some glitch in the system. If only it had been that simple. At 2017, the first call started coming in. Civilians reporting strange lights in the sky, moving in perfect formation. I brushed it off at first. You'd be surprised how often people mistake normal aircraft for UFOs. But then the volume of calls exploded. This wasn't just a few confused stargazers. Something big was happening. I remember picking up the red phone, the one that connected directly to my superior, General Hawthorne. "Sir," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "we've got a situation here." There was a long pause on the other end, too long. When the general finally spoke, his voice was tight and controlled. "Colonel Harmon, initiate protocol Zulu 9. This is not a drill." I repeat, this is not a drill. My blood ran cold. Zulu 9 was a protocol I'd only ever seen in training exercises, a response to confirmed extraterrestrial contact. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. I scrambled a couple of F-16s to intercept. Standard procedure. What wasn't standard was the sudden appearance of black SUVs and men in suits at our base. They took over our comms, feeding us coordinates, barking orders. These guys weren't from the Air Force. Probably NSA or some shadowy agency I'd never heard of. The pilots reported visual contact with something. Their voices were tense, confused. "Sir, this doesn't make sense. It's changing shape. Oh, God." Then static. Both jets went dark simultaneously. That's when all hell broke loose. Alarms blared, radar systems went haywire, and a blinding light flooded the base. For a moment, I thought I was dead. When my vision cleared, they were there, among us. They looked human, mostly, but their eyes, empty, reflective, like polished obsidian, and their movements were too fluid, too precise. I'll never forget the chill that ran down my spine when one locked eyes with me and smiled. It wasn't a human smile. The men in black seemed to know them, speaking in hushed tones, words like integration and assimilation floating around. I was ushered out, debriefed, and sworn to secrecy. They said it was a matter of national security and that the public wasn't ready for the truth. For years, I kept quiet. I watched the news, saw the ridiculous flare explanation, and noticed the subtle changes in society, technology, and politics. They were infiltrating every level, slowly but surely, hybrid beings, part human, part something else. Products of a long-term plan we'd unknowingly agreed to. I tried to live a normal life after that night. Got married, had kids, tried to forget. But how do you forget something like that? How do you look at the world the same way when you know it's really out there? I started noticing things. Little things at first. The way some people moved just a bit too smoothly. The way technology seemed to advance in sudden leaps, as if guided by an unseen hand. The subtle shift in our culture towards uniformity, towards a kind of eerie calmness in the face of global chaos. I tried to investigate discreetly, of course. I reached out to some of the other officers who were there that night. Most wouldn't talk to me. Those who did seemed changed. Their words were right, but their eyes were wrong, empty, like they'd been hollowed out and filled with something else. One night, about 5 years after the incident, I got a visit from an old friend, Major Tom Rye. He'd been one of the pilots that night, one of the ones we thought we'd lost. He showed up at my door looking haggard, desperate. "Jack," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "they're everywhere. They're in our governments, our schools, our families. We didn't stop an invasion that night. We opened the door for one." Before I could ask him more, a black van pulled up. 2 men in suits got out. Tom's eyes went wide with fear. He shoved a USB drive into my hand and ran. I never saw him again. The drive contained files, hundreds of them, satellite images, medical reports, classified memos. It painted a picture of a world already lost, humanity being slowly but surely replaced by something other. Why am I speaking out now? Because it's gone too far. Last month, my granddaughter was born. When I held her and looked into her eyes, I saw that same obsidian gleam. My son and daughter-in-law act like nothing's wrong, but their behavior has changed. They're too calm, too accepting. I think they've been replaced. The Phoenix Lights weren't a first contact scenario. They were a coming-out party, a signal that the final stage was beginning. We're not being invaded. We're being phased out, replaced by something that looks like us but isn't. I'm breaking my silence because someone needs to know to fight back. But I'm not naive. By the time you hear this, I'll probably be gone, disappeared, replaced, or worse. Look around you. Look closely at your friends, your family, your coworkers. Do you really know who they are anymore? They're among us, and they're patient. The lights in the sky were just the beginning. The real horror is the shadows walking beside us every day, wearing familiar faces, waiting for the right moment to shed their human disguise. You might be wondering why they don't just take over all at once, why the slow, methodical replacement. I've thought about this a lot. I think they need us, at least for now. They need our world, our infrastructure, our knowledge. They're learning from us, becoming us until one day they won't need us anymore. And the scariest part, most people will never notice. The change is too gradual, too subtle. By the time it's obvious, it'll be too late. If you're listening to this, you're one of the few who know the truth. Be careful. Trust no one, and whatever you do, don't look too long into anyone's eyes. You might not like what you see staring back at you. This is Colonel Jack Harmon, signing off. If I don't make it, remember, the truth is out there, hiding in plain sight. God help us all. Yes, if you're hearing this, it means my worst fears have come true. I've set up this recording to be released automatically if I don't check in regularly. So if you're listening, I'm already gone. But don't let my sacrifice be in vain. The truth is out there now. Use it. Fight back. It might already be too late for me, but maybe, just maybe, it's not too late for humanity. Remember, they're watching. They're always watching. Good luck. You're going to need it.